Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Honorable Ms. Mutmainna is our lecturer. Before we start our discussion today, let us introduce ourselves. We are from Group 7, the member of our group, Fitra Taqwa, Rahmah, Sari, and Inton. Okay, the first material will be explained by me. Okay, we are going to talk about the observing. Certain kind of research question can best be answered by observing how people act or how things look. For example, the researchers could interview teachers about how their students behave during class discussion of sensitive issues. But a more accurate indication of their activities will probably be obtained by actually observing such discussion while they take place. Okay, there are the roles of observation. The different roles. The first, that is participant observation studies. Second, non-participant observation studies. The third, naturalistic observation. And the fourth, coding observational data. So the first, that is participant observation studies. In participant observation studies, the researcher actually participate in the situation or setting they are observing. It means when a researcher takes on the role of a complete participant group, his identity is not known to any the individual being observed. So the teacher here must be interacts with the member of the group as naturally as possible, and for all intents the purposes so far as they are concerned. And here the researcher chooses the role of participant observer. He also participates fully in the activities of group being studied, but also make it clear that he is doing a research. And the second, that is non-participant observation study. In here, the researcher don't participate in the activity being observed, but rather sit on the sidelines and watch. They are not directly involved in the situation they are observing. So here the researcher chooses the role of observer as participant. The researcher identifies as herself as a researcher, but makes no pretense of actually being a member of group she is observing. And the third, that is naturalistic observation. So the naturalistic observation that involves observing individual in their natural meeting. So the researchers makes no effort whatsoever to manipulate variables or to control the activities of individuals, but simply observes and records what happened as things natural occur. So the activities of student and athletic event, the interaction between student and teacher on the playground, or activities of very young children in nursery, for example, are properly best understood through naturalistic observation. So much of the work, the famous child psychologists, Jean Piaget involved with naturalistic observation. Many of conclusions on cognitive development, which grow out of watching his own children as they developed, have simulated further research in this area. Insight obtained as a result of naturalistic observation, in fact, often serve as the basis for more formal experiment. So here we have a simulation. So the simulation, the researchers in effect actually tells the subject what to do, but not how to do it. This is for me a researcher to observe what happens in certain kind of situations, including those that occur fairly infrequently in school or other educational settings. Observer effects. The presence of an observer can have a considerable effect on the behavior of those being observed, and hence on the outcomes of study. This is known as an observer effect. Also, the observational data that with the observational records inevitably to some extent reflect the biases and feeling points of the researchers. Observer bias. Observer bias refers to possibility that certain the characteristics or ideas of observers may bias what they see. Bourdieu's qualitative researchers have continually had to deal with the chart that is very easy for their prejudices to bias their data, but this is something which all researchers must deal. And the part that is holding the observational data. Over the years, quantitative research has selected a number of coding schemes to use when they observe. A coding scheme is a set of categories that is, example, give directions, ask questions, and prices. That a sector data records the frequency of person or group behavior, and here use the technology. Thank you. Maybe just this for me. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, my name is Fitra Sari. I will continue the next part that is about interviewing. Interviewing is an important way for a researcher to check the accuracy of the impression he or she has gained through observation. It means to verify or refute that impressions. And there are types of interviews. There are 4 types. The first is structured, and then the second is semi-structured, and then informal, and the last is retrospective. Okay, the first types is structured and semi-structured. Structured and semi-structured are verbal questionnaires. Rather formal, they consist of a series of questions designed to elicit specific answers from respondents. Often they are used to obtain information that can later be compared and contrasted. In qualitative research, structured and semi-structured interviews are often best conducted toward the end of a study, as they tend to shape responses to the researcher's perceptions of how things are. They are most useful for obtaining information to test a specific hypothesis that the researcher has in mind. And then the next is informal interviews. Informal interviews are much less formal than structured or semi-structured interviews. They tend to resemble casual conversation, pursuing the interest of both the researcher and the respondent in turn. They are the most common type of interview in qualitative research. They don't involve any specific type or sequence of questions or any particular form of questioning. The primary intent of an informal interview is to find out what people think, and how the views of one individual compare with those of another. And the last is retrospective. Retrospective can be structured, semi-structured, or informal. A retrospective interview is the least likely of the four interview types to provide accurate, reliable data for the researcher. And the next is types of interview questions. There are 6 types of interview questions. The first is background. Background are routine sorts of questions about the backgrounds characteristic of the respondents. They include questions about education, previous occupations, age, income, and so on. And the second is knowledge. Pertain to the factual information as contrasted with opinions, beliefs, and attitudes respondents possess. A knowledge question about a school, for example, might concern the kinds of courses available to students, graduation requirements, the sorts of extracurricular activities provided, school rules, enrollment policies, and the like. From a qualitative perspective, what the researcher wants to find out is what the respondents consider to be factual information, as opposed to beliefs or attitudes. And the next is experience. Focus on what a respondent is currently doing or has done in the past. It lists the behaviors or activities that could have been observed but were not. It means for reasons such as the researcher not being present. And then the next is opinion. Opinion are aimed to finding out what people think about some topic or issue. Answer to such question call attention to the respondents' goals, beliefs, attitudes, or values. For example, might include such question as, what do you think about the principal's new policy concerning absenteeism? Or what would you like to see change in the way things are done in your US history class? And the next is feelings. Feelings concern how respondents feel about things. They are direct about things. They are directed toward people's emotional responses to their experience. For example, the examples might include such question as, how do you feel about the way students behave in the school? Or to what extent are you anxious about going to gym class? Feelings and opinion questions are often confused. It is very important for anyone who wishes to be a skillful interviewer to be able to distinguish between the two types of questions and to know when to ask each. To find out how someone feels about an issue is not the same thing as finding out their opinion about the issue. And then the last is sensory. Focus on what a respondent has seen, heard, tasted, smelled, or touched. For the examples, it might include questions such as when you enter your classroom, what do you see? Or how would you describe what your class sounds like? Although this type of question could be considered as a form of experience or behavior question, it is often overlooked by researchers during an interview. Further, such questions are sufficiently distinct to warrant a category of their own. And then the next is ethics in interviewing. There are two ethics in interviewing. The first is the necessity for informed consent. In-depth interviews ask participation to reveal much about their lives. During such interviews, a measure of intimacy can develop between interviewers and participants that can lead participants to share information about events in their lives that, if misused, could leave them very vulnerability. And the second is data collection and analysis in qualitative research. There are important differences between quantitative and qualitative approaches to data collection and analysis. Although qualitative research can and sometimes does make use of structured instruments such as those described in chapter 7. Okay, I think that's all from me. We go to the next part that will be presented by my friends Inton. For Inton, time is yours.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Inton from PBI 2. So now I want to continue the material about validity and reliability in qualitative research. So validity here refers to appropriateness, meaningfulness, and usefulness of the inferences researcher make based specifically on the data they collect. And while reliability refers to the consistency of these inferences over time, location, and circumstances. And so for the qualitative researchers use a number of techniques therefore to check their perception to ensure that they are not being misinformed, that they are in effect saying or hearing what they think they are. And how for the procedure for checking on or enhancing validity and reliability include such as using variety of instruments to collect data. When a conclusion is supported by data collected from a number of different instruments, its validity is thereby enhanced. And next, checking what informs description of something or a way of doing thing or a reason for doing something against another informant description of this something. And next, learning to understand and where appropriate speak the vocabulary of the group being studied. Then, writing down the question asked in addition to answer received. So this help researcher make send at a later date of answer recorded earlier and help them reduce distortion owing to selective forgetting. Okay, next, recording truck while conducting conducting observation and interviews. And next, asking one or more participant in the study to review the accessory of the research report. This is frequently referred to as member checking. And then obtaining an individual outside of the study to review and evaluate the report. This is called an external audit. And then next, documenting the sources of remarks whenever possible and appropriate. And then documenting the basis for inferences. And after that, describing the context in which questions are asked and situations are observed. And next, using audio and video recording when possible and appropriate. And after that, drawing conclusion based on one's understanding of the situation being observed, and then acting on this conclusion. If this conclusion are invalid, the researcher will soon find out after acting on them. And then interviewing individuals more than once. After that, observing the setting or situation of interest over a period of time. The length of an observation is extremely important in qualitative research. And the last is analyzing negative cases. Okay. Next, there are some part of purpose in qualitative research. So, the first is for the purpose of the study. The first is exploratory, to investigate a little understood event, situation, or circumstance, and to identify or discover important variable, and also to generate hypotheses for further research. And how about the possible research? Here, use what is happening in the school, like what are the important them or pattern in the way teachers behave in the school, or how are these them or patterns like together. How the research strategy use case study, observation, and file study. For example of the data collection, use participant observation, non-participant observation, or in-depth interviewing, and also selective interviewing. And next, and the second, descriptive. Here, descriptive to document an event, situation, or circumstance or interest. How about the possible research question? What there is what are the important behavior, event, attitude, processes, or structure occurring in the school, like that. And for the research strategy, there are like study, field study, ethnography, and also can use observation. And how about the example of the data collecting? There are participant observation, non-participant observation, or in-depth interviewing. Also can use written questionnaire. And the third, here purpose of the study about explanatory. So how about the possible research question? Here there are what event, belief, attitude, or policies are shaping the nature of the school, and so how did this forces interest to shape the school. And how about the research strategy here, such as case study, field study, ethnography. And for the data example of the data collection, like participant observation, or can use non-participant observation, in-depth interviewing, written questionnaire. And the last, about predictive. Here, to predict the outcome of an event, situation, or circumstance, and also to forecast behavior or action that might result from an event, situation, or circumstance. And for the possible research question, there are what is likely to occur in the future as a result of these policies, in place at the school, and also you, who will be affected in the and in what way, and for the research strategy, like observation and interview, just to. And also for the example of the data here, like in-depth interviewing, and also can use written questionnaire. Okay, next about an example of qualitative research. You can look at the picture in my PPT. So for the abstract, we must put implicit directional hypothesis in the first paragraph for the abstract, and then uh, for the title walk and talk intervention, we must put prior research, like the paragraph, and we must put the purpose. For example, the research goal is to discover if this communication has a beneficial effect on selected youth and their problem behaviors, like that. And also, we must put the possible researcher's bias in the last paragraph. And how about the method? We must put convenience sample in the first paragraph method, and also we must have a good clarification. Don't unclear clarification, okay? And then we must put participant observer in the next paragraph. And then after that, we must have to good question, procedures, good detail in the paragraph, and also and we must put formal detail, because the research need more detail and also good detail. And for the result and discussion, in the first paragraph, we must put how reported, like in the first paragraph in the picture. And also we must put good question. It is important. And also we have to what evidence in the first paragraph for youth are, and also providing sources of information. In youth B, we must put good detail, and also in youth C, we must explaining away, and after that the next youth D, we put internal validity. And next for the youth A, we must make a question validity, like the picture in the paragraph. And next for the youth F, we must give good detail in the first paragraph, and to have qualified terms seem to conducting first sentence in paragraph. In youth G, we must put in the first paragraph unclear to us. It means we have to clear the information, and also explaining way in the second paragraph. And then in youth H, we must put what evidence and redundant. And the last is conclusion. In conclusion, we must put good question in the first paragraph, like the picture. Okay, I think that's all for me. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.